The webinar is now broadcasting to all attendees. Barb, Kleiss, Kim, Gabby, Jeff, Jay, Rob, my man. Hashtag life profit, right? Isn't that what it is? I think that's what it is, right? He'll get that. Bill, guys, good to see you, my friend. See, this is always the fun part because we invest, a lot of energy and time in planning these and hoping that we develop content that will be not just relevant but valuable to our industry, because everybody that you were looking at, all these faces, these smiles, we love this industry. We love these communities. We love the people that make them vibrant, our small businesses, our attractions, our hotels. And in putting these things together, we're always like, well, we hope people register, hope people want to attend and whatnot in the midst of Zoom fatigue and webinar fatigue and everything else, right? So the fact that we opened this thing up and here we are up to 74 of you, Amy and Allison, Allie, Amanda.
Kevin Langston, all right.
Jason. So all of you guys, so glad. Thank you for tuning in. Karen, Chicago's North Shore, love it. Love that. Thank you so much for tuning in again.
Grayson. You know what's pretty crazy, Josh, is that I was looking through the numbers, and we've been running this series of with alongside Streetsense here for what, 2 months?
Yeah.
1,400 different people have attended one of these webinars, which is just really, really cool that we've been able to bring together and keep in touch with all of our industry colleagues over the course of this last 8 weeks. And it's been awesome to watch every week.
It is. And it's especially special to me because having been on both sides, having worked a long time on the DMO side and now kind of being on the side helping with strategy and planning and recovery and everything else, it's just a joy. It's a joy to see us be able to come together like this. It's a joy to host friends like Gathan and Mitch and Susan and Justin. Thank you all for tuning in and making time to be with us today. I really do appreciate each of you dearly. So thank you for joining us.
I got to give a shout out to Chanel on the call, man. My fellow Kentucky person from Shelbyville, Kentucky. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.
What up, Chanel?
And Will, you were saying we've got a big announcement, right?
Yeah, no, before we kick this off as well, while we're waiting for everybody to come on, I just wanted to share some great news with eTourism Summit. We were planning on celebrating our 21st year this year, given we were going to be in Seattle, but given the global pandemic and the shutdown on travel, we've had to make some adjustments, some change. So I have some exciting things to announce about eTourism Summit. Our 21st year will be held October 19th through 21st at the Whitten in Las Vegas. We'll be going back to Seattle next year and support our partners there. But we have some really great programs this year. We can attend the event live in Vegas. We're also, because it is our 21st year, we're going to have 21 virtual sessions, very similar to these. So it's be more of a hybrid event, and partners can attend in person. You can attend all the virtual events. You can provide that the virtual events available to the entire DMO, all the staff that otherwise would not be able to go. And we're really excited about a new component of it. We're going to have a community pass. So a destination can provide all the content of those 21 virtual sessions to all the industry partners within the community. So your marketing partners at the restaurants, attractions, hotels, and retail shops, so they can get the benefit of all the smart minds like this. So again, based on 1,400 different people participating in this series, we think that we'll go from maybe a 300-person event to impacting and touching 1,000 or more marketers and help the entire industry. So excited to announce that. It's going to be a great month of October, celebrating eTourism Summit's 21st year, a little bit differently, but I think given the minds we've got here, it could be even more impactful than it ever has been. So we're looking forward to that.
I love that. If you haven't received an email about that, or you want to, be sure to subscribe to Connect Travel and get those updates. I'm especially excited about the Community Pass because I've seen firsthand how helpful, positioning your DMO as a thought leader in your own backyard to help educate, supply education and growth opportunities there. That's huge. So I'm really excited about that. Susan, you're getting a ton of love in these chat. I don't know if you're paying attention to this or not, but
I don't have that up, so I love it. And
No, I love it.
I
And
miss
Ross.
the industry. I miss my friends so much. So this is so much fun to be involved with this. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely, yeah. And Ross and Nan both give you a shout out, and that's good. So love it. Well, why don't we? We've got 114, obviously more joining in. And again, thank you all for tuning in. Lori Jo says, yes, subscribe to the Travel Vertical, of course. Fantastic publication there. We love that. Love staying in touch with what's happening. Well, why don't we? Many of you probably recognize these faces, these names on the call. Some of you don't, and which is great. So why don't we go around and just introduce Susan? Let's just start out for you. Introduce yourself and those that may not be familiar with you.
Okay, Susan Whitaker, and I had started in tourism a long time ago, but had been with Dolly Parton for attractions over in East Tennessee, was vice president of marketing there, and was asked by Governor Bredesen in 2003 to come over and be his commissioner of tourist development, and was very pleased to be kept on through his 2 administrations, and then also with Governor Bill Haslam, and then left the state in 2015, and for the last 5 years have been working on with my own company and working on individual projects, but have just loved this industry so much, and it has been just one of the best things that's ever been in my life. So it's great to be here.
I'm glad, I've obviously am familiar with you, having worked with you at Tennessee and at Franklin, Visit Franklin for many years, but I just am thankful for your leadership for state of Tennessee. You did such an incredible job for us. And I'm just really glad to see you here, and thank you for giving me time for sure. Mitch, my buddy, I'm sure everyone here knows you, but maybe even sporting that shirt too, especially. We've loved that campaign. How are you doing?
Well, in Fort Worth, we say y'all means all, so thanks for calling out the shirt. Very relevant to today's discussion. But I would say it's great to see everybody. I've been in the industry only about 7 years. Before that, I marketed SMU, a university in Dallas. Turns out universities are in the, thanks, Will. Turns out universities are in the tourism business too. People want to know where to eat, where to stay, what's it like to live there. But I love this industry. It's been, the power is in the people, both those in our communities and everyone here on the call. I lead an amazing team who every day ask our community what we can do to tell their story. And thanks for including us.
Absolutely. And I think Holly is on the call too, right? Or Hillary. No, Hillary. I see Hillary there. You've got some team members, so I love it. It's good. Gathan, my man, how you doing?
What up, man? Hey, everybody. Gathan, VisitLEX in Lexington, Kentucky. Been in the industry for 13 years. So started out in Louisville, and now I'm in Lexington, and I'm all things Kentucky, all things bourbon. So whatever you need, just come holler at me.
And easily one of the best dressed men in the industry, right? We give you a hard time about that, but we love it. It's fantastic. Right. And Justin, so good to see you again, man. I'm just glad to see your smile. Thanks for taking the time and joining us. Introduce yourself for those on the call.
Hi, Josh. Thanks for having me. I'm Justin Bresler. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development for Denver, Visit Denver. So greetings from the Mile High City and from Colorado.
Love it. I love it. So, this call is has gotten a lot of attention. This title, I should say, this subject of what we were going to talk about has gotten a lot of attention over the last few weeks and months. COVID has certainly just wrecked everything of what we thought 2020 would look like, amongst other things, right? And we're continuing to kind of work through what recovery looks like and what opening up looks like and what's giving support, role of the DMO, all these questions, right, have brought up. And so it's been apparent. It's, we just want to dive in. Should the ROI change? Should knowing what we know now, should the ROI change for what we think about the role of the DMO, the role of our staff, the role of our programs, what we do, all of that. We all of us on a call for those attending, we had a great call on Monday kind of prepping for this, and easily could have gone on probably all day. We hit a time limit and had to jump. So we know that this hour is going to be really great. Just a quick housekeeping notes as we get in. Add your questions in the Q&A or chat or the chat window as you get them, and we'll do our best to answer them, of course. And if you're not viewing in gallery mode, you might prefer that so that you can see all of us at the same time, and it's a little less disruptive than to just have speaker mode with that. But so who wants to kick us off? Should the ROI change?
Yes. That's it. That's awesome. No, I mean, we were moving in this direction even before COVID hit, and we can't have this call without also talking about the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. We were moving from, destination marketers to destination managers anyway. We were moving towards needing to really be recognizing that our community members were our primary stakeholders. We always say we're doing that through economic development, but where we were moving was resident quality of life. And that's what this is about. And I can't say we have all the answers as to what metrics that will encompass, but we are about making life better for our residents. And there's some issues that we're going to be more leaned into versus others. But a resounding yes, we should always be evaluating our role in the community, making sure we have a seat at the table, and making sure that we can turn to our constituents and say, we are improving your quality of life through tourism and all the benefits that brings, and while doing it responsibly as well.
And I think to start off by saying, should it change? I think let's acknowledge where we've been. Hotel room nights, certainly jobs are important. And so, counting the number of visitors. And I think the two big questions we need to answer in this hour or lean into are, if we are going to change, what are we leaving behind? Or are we bringing things together? And then the second thing is, if we're going to spend a minute more time on something else, or we're going to spend $1 on something else that we weren't before, where are we taking that from? Who's doing that in our own organization? So it's not just coming up with a new KPI. It's really answering some big questions about our organizations and where we're spending our time and money.
I love that you mentioned that, because it's easy to default to KPIs, right? It's easy to say, look at, clicks, impressions, right? Conversions, economic impact, right? There's a challenge even in that, but if what I hear you beginning to say, which we've all talked about, quality of life is huge. Without a, vibrant quality of life, what is there to actually market, right? What is there to actually invite people to experience themselves? So what's a KPI to quality of life, right? I mean, how do you even think about measuring that? Gathan, what you got?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you bring up a really good point, because I think a lot of times people, interchange the word KPI with ROI, and they're two totally different things.
Yeah.
And, even, what I've been doing for the past several years is I've even moved away from the term ROI and really use the term ROO, which is return on objective. Because I think when we start talking about ROI, it goes down the path of investment. Like, what kind of money are you putting towards something? But, the true work of a DMO is more than just monetary investment, right? And I think it's we have to really think about the return on our objectives that allow us to bring in all of these non-monetary conversations that really keep a community thriving, like the relationships and the community building and the business building piece. And that is where the new kind of ROI kind of comes into play for us as we look forward.
And Susan, you got such a great perspective with the background on the state level, and have seen, historically in this industry, kind of be more or less happy to be anonymous in some ways, right? Historically.
I think it was a combination of, you're under the radar, so you're not always being attacked for something and somebody trying to take your money. But initially, going back 20 years, it was impossible almost to get anybody to pay attention to the fact that you were an industry. It was like, vacations, what is that? That's just that fluffy little thing. So economic impact was primarily the way that you made yourself important, especially to your funding authorities. And what I would suggest is, and it's already been alluded to earlier, is as we move forward into other ways and other stakeholders of ours in this industry, and we start to develop their return on investment, what are they investing and how do we make sure their return is good? We cannot lose the fact that our economic impact is still a crucial part of how we're going to make our cases to the funding authorities, and letting them know, this is what it's going to cost. What I was concerned about, as I've been watching over the last few months, is some of the stakeholders that tourism does enormous good for, our historic preservationists and things like that. Some of them were going, hey, this is great. Some of this stuff doesn't belong. It should have been done away with. You've overpopulated this downtown. You've really messed up our resources. That whole over-tourism thing started to bubble up. And it occurred to me that we just need to make sure as we go through, because I think we can make a list of all of our stakeholders and then determine for each one of those, what are the returns, benefits they're looking for, and then how do we meet those? So it's not an either or. I would suggest this is going to take us some time to sit down and really start looking at all of the stakeholders, all of the returns, and all of the benefits to them. And then our messages can become very specific to each of those groups.
So Justin, if that kind of idea around, diving into impact, I mean, I'd love to hear from you. How are you leading your team in answering what is our impact? What should our impact be?
Well, I appreciate Susan saying that, we can't get away from this economic impact thing. The economic impact is really front and center for us. I think that I try to empower my team to look at the city in a 360-degree fashion. And, for instance, right now, as we kind of unpack the Black Lives Matter movement and as in trying to figure out, how we've always, cast a spotlight on, a lot of our diverse audiences, but that doesn't mean that we're doing it as well as we could. And so as an organization, we're looking at it from everything from, are we bringing on the right, purchasing policy, hiring practices, doubling down on how we are promoting those communities and making sure that we're doing it in a way that feels authentic to them. So we're not just putting, window dressing on this. And, as far as COVID goes, we have to consider what it means to bring tourists into our community and making sure that we feel like we're not going to be running afoul of the community sentiment, to make sure that they don't see us as bringing in people who themselves might be coming from markets where practices aren't being followed as stringently as they are in Denver, and making sure that we can, hold our head up to this community and saying we're doing it smartly and responsibly, and communicating through our advertising, through the messaging on our website, through our social media, through our public relations, that Denver is safe and open for businesses. But we also have an expectation on you as a visitor to make sure that you're keeping ourselves, yourselves, our service workers, and our residents safe as you enjoy yourselves in the city.
I think it's fair to say that puts us in a good but vulnerable position. Asking those kind of questions and saying that we're going to go out in our city and say, how are we doing? To ask specific neighborhoods about that, to doing more than, just pushing restaurants and fun things to do. These are tough questions. And I think they require new skill sets in the industry. And, I think that COVID and Black Lives Matter really are an interesting 1-2 combination for the industry. So COVID-19 hits and we all say, oh, we're pivoting local, Then Black Lives Matter comes along and we're all really challenged to say, okay, put your money where your mouth is. You're involved in local. You're going to make yourselves, again, come in a healthy way vulnerable to the community. And that's just a very different posture for many DMOs than they may have had in the past. So again, I think new skill sets, new challenges for us.
Gathan, I'd obviously love for you to jump in there.
Yeah, I was going to jump in because kind of like what Susan said and kind of like what Justin and Mitch are saying, it's like, with all that's going on with COVID / protests against police brutality, social injustice, and racism, DMOs, we now have a chance to actually step into the limelight for our communities. And we've argued for the past 5, 7, 10 years, nobody knows what the hell we do. Well, now the light is on us and we have the opportunity to step in and get that attention that we begged for years. And I think to me, it's, we can't allow this moment to pass us up. We fought for it. We wanted the attention, but now we got to put our money where our mouth is. And so now what I love about it is the challenge, and that we're stepping into a space where we've never gone before. And it's really challenging not only us as leaders within our organizations, but all of our staff and our entire organizations to really rethink, like, how do we really make an impact from DMO standpoint? We want people to know what we do. We want them to know our impact. The economic impact, as you mentioned before, that's super critical, important now, especially given how the industry has basically decimated all of our cities and all our communities. So to me, the economics are even more important because we are probably the one organization that can lead our cities out of this mess. And so again, it goes back to the economic impact and how important it is for us to really share those and step into the limelight and let's step up to the plate, because we've been begging for it for years.
And we would have no ROI in any way if we didn't have travelers. If we didn't have people that are motivated to come, whether they're going to be local in the next couple of years and eventually, it'll branch out. It's super important for us, especially as we're looking to change the product a little bit and talk about, really becoming more, listening closer to our local communities, how we want to do this and not just get into our competitive drive. We want to be the best, the biggest. We want to always increase by whatever percentage. I just think we've got that opportunity to look at what kind of what kind of travelers are we looking for? What kind of, and making sure that the messages that we're sending out there so that we're motivating them to make those trips, make their own investment, put aside whatever dollars they're going to have, because they're going to be constrained just like our budgets are constrained, their personal budgets are constrained. What are those things that we are saying your bucket list can't happen virtually? We've got these incredible places. We're going to have to start weaving those messages in subtly, because nobody wants to get hit over the head with that, especially right now. But it's really important for us to be thinking not just of the local communities, but also of our travelers and what investments they're making, and making sure that the experiences that they have are the kind of things that they're going to say, yeah, that was the memory I made with my kids that I'll never get back again. It was awesome. So this is so multifaceted. It's really incredible.
Mitch, you had mentioned, jobs earlier, and I love that, because that's one element of what we're experiencing here that is decimating our communities, right? I mean, the hospitality industry alone is, it was obviously, we saw a good report a couple of weeks ago with 1.5 million jobs coming back specifically in hospitality industry. But what are you seeing in Fort Worth, and what are you guys thinking about in terms of how do you assist with recovering jobs, and how do you participate in that kind of part of the conversation?
Well, I think that builds on a little bit of what Susan was saying, because at the end of the day, we'd love for any DMO in the chat to vote and say that they really don't care what their hotels think of all this new community engagement. I mean, the fact is we still, our funding really relies, at least in Fort Worth, and I think for many of our viewers, participants, on hotel revenue, visitor revenue. And if anybody's found the magic new fabled revenue source, please let us know. But the fact is that we still need visitors to fill hotels, and frankly, we're entering a more common environment, and we're going to have to look at different states, different ways. So, from this perspective, that's something I think we've given fair lip service to, but really understanding where those jobs come from. Now, specifically, we've been spending time in the convention space. We made a tough decision to make some changes that allowed us to keep a lot of our convention sales team on board, because as hotels either closed down or frankly eliminated vast amounts of staff, we positioned ourselves to basically keep the conversation going with clients who were rebooking for group business for future years, and to have someone frankly to answer the email, text, and call. So for us, it was trying to be an extension of our partners and a convening of our partners looking to the future.
Yeah, Josh, if I could just keep on the jobs thing, because if it's just to underscore the fact of how fast things have changed, it was in the first couple of months of this year that we had convened our board. We were experiencing the tightest labor market in our history, and our service industry partners, primarily the restaurants and hotels, were screaming for assistance, not just from us, but from across private and public sector. How do we develop new sources of workforce? And I look at the work that was done as we were preparing to help them, crack into new sectors of the market because we had such a tight labor pool. I think that some of those, the way we were going might be applied in this new situation. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people out of work out there, so we know there's more of a labor pool, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep going forward with some of the ideas that we had about going into areas where the tourism industry was not necessarily seen as a career industry. It's easy to see it at the collegiate level where people can have bachelors in hotel management, hospitality, event management, but it wasn't seen as that strong of an industry at the high school and a vocational level, because there was a stigma attached with the entry-level jobs being house cleaners, dishwashers, but there are so many examples of people coming out of those first jobs that now manage restaurants and manage hotels or departments of hotels. And when I look at how that can benefit underserved communities, that is as relevant today as it was when we were talking about a really tight labor pool.
And it's interesting because all of those jobs and the loss of those jobs has been headlines lately. People saying when they had no idea the impact that tour and travel had on the entire economy. The industry clusters that we have are huge. we have our big attractions in some states, and people come and they stay in a hotel, not because they just want to come and stay in somebody else's bed. They come because they want to go and do something they really they love doing. And the numbers of people that are involved in the industry, and then the indirect industries, that's the suppliers and all of those things, it became a headline. Gee, we had no idea that if we shut down the travel, that all this other stuff would happen. So again, we have a moment here, it's put us in that place where people understand this is an industry that drives enormous economic benefit and also a lot of job creation. Some of those jobs are jobs that people want because it's part-time. Some of those jobs are entry level, and they're going to make their way up and be CEOs of the company. And, continuing to tell those stories, we might have, it's a moment now. You can't talk about all of those jobs that are happening now, but the lack of those jobs has made it even more evident how important they were at the time.
I want to jump in with one more specific, just real quick, one specific footnote on this. As far as jobs go, we're being asked by our restaurant community, which is having a real hard time figuring out staffing, when to bring, even those who can afford through grants to bring people back. They need more help than ever getting information on when people are coming to town. Do we have any group activity? We do have some, a little bit. Can we get information from our hotels just to see patterns to help them estimate? They might bring some crews on board. And that's really in the trenches stuff for us, far more than just sharing the convention calendar.
I just add one other thing, kind of what everybody's talking about jobs. And I think it's important that we share those stories. And I think one of the ones that, going back to a travel webinar that happened last week, was hearing Ernie Whitten, who's the retiring chairman of LA Tourism, hearing his story. He started off as a bellman. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you think of a guy like that, an African-American man, being a bellman and then growing up to doing what he's doing now. I think those are the kind of stories, like Justin is saying. It's like, people need to realize that just because you start on entry level doesn't mean that is your ceiling. There's a lot more opportunities that are out there, but stories like his are ones that we need to make sure that this industry continues to elevate and share.
Hey, Josh, we actually went so far as to create a whole video showing careers in the tourism industry, highlighting people who had started at the entry level and are now managing departments or hotels. And I'd be happy to send that link to you, and you can include it in the follow-up to the webinar.
Oh, I would love that. That'd be great to see for sure. It's, again, if you're thinking, okay, maybe our ROI shifts or changes from what we've said, yes, it should change. We've said that. We've kind of all shook in our heads and agreed to that. And if we really are embracing this moment, as you guys are describing, and thinking quality of life, then jobs absolutely comes into that, right? Jobs absolutely factors into going, not just saying, well, we don't know. It should demand of us, all right, let's roll up our sleeves. Who are the conversations that we need to start hosting? Who do we need to invite to the table, right? Where are those places that we can, again, this is one of the great things about our industry is we are fantastic at bringing people together, right? Building coalitions, fostering that spirit of like, how do we work together? How do we take each piece from each piece and whatever, and then make something bigger and better, right? So it should happen with the job market in each destination as well. We've got a great question from Matt. I want to bring this up and open this up to you guys. Matt Grayson says, if DMOs are becoming more managers than marketers, then aren't you assuming a policy component that would require even more cooperation with elected officials and possibly a conflict of interest with stakeholders? I think it's a great question. Who wants to jump at that?
Josh, I think it brings out a really interesting conversation, and kind of going back to this ROI, that this is a huge opportunity for DMOs. And I think, and we've had some conversations here about the role of DMOs and communities moving forward, being even more connected. And to me, it seems like answering the question of what does success look like is going to be a very different answer than it may have been the answer 6 months ago. And it's going to be more networked, more community driven. And by its nature, it's going to require a lot more coordination with other organizations within communities. And I don't think any organization is more or better aligned than the DMO in any community to bring those groups together and identify what success looks like and how that can be achieved. And certainly the government component is going to be a bigger component. But I think success in a broader term really lays out what the ROIs can be in the future. And it may pit one thing against the other. May pit some, a full-time job is more important to our community than a part-time job. How do we get more full-time jobs? Maybe, how do we balance out our, our high season and low season and focus on yield rather than just, focusing on our peaks of more record visitation. So I think it does set up some challenges, but there's never been a better time for DMOs to take the reins and work with the other organizations and other, neighborhood organizations, to chambers, to downtown groups, to, all the elements that make our communities so strong. And there's nobody better to do it than a DMO.
Well, talking about managing down, not down, but across to the local, I would suggest you also look at managing up to your statewide associations, hospitality associations, your state tourism offices, because they're looking to figure out how they're going to be relevant in this new environment. They've got resources you don't. They obviously have political contacts that could be very valuable. They also have policy that they can be very helpful with if you're contacting them. So I just would, as you're looking locally, don't forget to also look statewide and even at US Travel and places like that can give you some help there and also be part of this conversation at a national level, which will only help amplify your local voice.
Yeah, you've also brought up funding source and diversifying. Of course, we've had a lot of conversations around this too. And so, Will, if you're saying, as a result of these kind of conversations, we are now being invited to have, and you may pit, some stakeholders against others, right? But at the same time, it's also, Mitch, you said this. It's demanding the what was the word you used specifically? It's the skills that we've not previously needed, right? But now we do, right? And so, in some degree, we straddle this line between public-private sector. Nonprofit sector, but then also hard driving toward business objectives like economic impact and things like that. And it's a really interesting sphere to kind of be in. And this certainly is giving us the opportunity to pivot and innovate around. Let's think, how do we protect ourselves from potentially not being here again? So that might mean diversification of funding, and what policy can we pursue? What conversations can we invite? Who do we need to connect to even begin those kind of conversations when others, in at previous times, again, when everything is so good, like Will, you were saying this before, when we've had record growth, nothing makes us lazier than being able to report, yep, we did it again. Good job, team. Right? I mean, that's a really easy way to just ease into comfortability and then kind of relax our way into not knowing exactly what we're doing.
So think about that, right? So when we're addicted to record number, we continue to focus on that, right? It's hard to change the narrative when you're in that kind of a system. But think about how we have conversations differently if we're thinking about the success of the community. And if it's community, the health and wellness of the community is going to be a much more attractive destination, right? If we have a happy community, if everybody's working on, but think of how we address situations differently. Just take a issue like homelessness. If all we're concerned about is record visitation, we're addressing homelessness as a negative that is impacting the visitor experience. And as a result, it's going to be harder to get people to come visit. But if we're thinking about homelessness as an issue of a healthy community, we're going to address that differently, and the result will be a better experience for visitors. So it's how you focus the questions that I think gives a more powerful opportunity for us to be community-focused organizations to the benefit of the community versus 100% out there just to drive visitor volume.
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of like the difference between trickle down and trickle up. I think what the old model was economic impact is the rising tide that lifts the entire community up. But Will, I think you're 100% right. As you address the quality of life for residents, it's going to make us a better place to visit as well as it is a better place to live.
Well, and that answer was been kind of under our nose for a while. We like to talk as an industry about the importance of VFR, visiting friends and relatives, and people invite their friends. Well, really that means tourism derives its power from our community and their willingness to buy into our industry. To Susan's point, this is our lane. This is how we drive economic development, but we really are going to derive that from the ability of the community to work together. I'd recommend, you follow Gloria Laurie as the Chief Marketing Officer at Destination Canada, to hear her talk about the power of collaboration and across districts in your community. We tend to look at things by district, but the more we collaborate, the more value we can really create in the visitor experience.
I love that you bring that up. Another one I would suggest, right, as an opportunity to do this, On the Table is a great organization. I know Franklin and, where I live, we've used that a couple of different years now. It's a fantastic organization to foster exactly these kind of conversations across industries, across stakeholder groups, attractions, both large and small. Leslie mentions, what about smaller attractions and receptives and stuff like that? Every voice, right, matters. Every voice is important to bring and invite to the table. And to think that we can just go, oh, well, we've got this anchor attraction, right? This is the destination driver, and let's just make sure we're paying attention to them, but we're not intentionally hosting conversations at regular intervals. That's, creating those feedback loops even, right? To invite all of that, right? Now more important than ever. Susan, looked like you were about to jump in there. I'm sorry if I cut you off.
To your point, I think that there is now, even in your traveler, they're looking for somewhat different experiences. Maybe they're not looking to go to that huge attraction that they've visited already or haven't visited, or they'll put that off for a couple of years. So look at where you have opportunity, where people will feel more comfortable, where they're going to have some, just, I don't want to start rattling off the specific things I can think of, but then there are a lot of places now that people are going to select for the next couple of years that they might not have looked at, and we wouldn't have been talking a lot about. So what a great opportunity for them to get a little of the spotlight on them.
So, Amrita asked a good question, and it has me wondering, we touched on funding just a little bit, and you guys have kind of jumped in there, but are you guys having the conversations as to the, obviously we don't know what the recovery is going to look like exactly. You don't know when you're going to get back to whatever. There's lots of, pontifications out there about it. But I mean, are you having conversation going, what will this look like? What should we target for us? Maybe we had some visitor goal before, but now we're throwing that out the window. What do those conversations look like for you guys?
I think a lot of our conversation right now is really how do we rebuild the city? I mean, that's just an honest conversation that we're having. And, we're actually getting ready to start marketing again at the end of next week, leading into 4th of July weekend. But even the conversations that we're having around how we actually market, a lot of our work is really going to be built around how do I help the mom and pop shop who has been shut down for the last 3 months, who has 0 staff. How do I help them build that business back up again to when I am telling visitors to come in here and see it, that they can actually service them in the right way? And so we've been having a ton of those conversations of like, where do we step in? Like, how do we really help these communities rebuild? Because I've been telling people amongst a lot of the circles that I'm in, is like, I enjoyed seeing the sentiment videos that everybody put out that says, we'll be here for whenever you're ready to travel again. But, I always play the devil's advocate, and I said, well, will you actually be there? If your hotels are shutting down and your restaurants are shutting down, are you going to be there to service the visitor in the way that you've done pre-COVID? And the answer is probably no. So then you've got to figure out now post-COVID, how do I help these businesses rebuild? And that's honestly, we're having those true conversations of really trying to help them just get back to opening up, and what can we do as our role to help them do that?
Well, in forums like this, eTourism Summit, what a great place to get the best practices. Because I don't know that anybody has that answer right now. We're going to start to see people try things, and it's places like that. I would always steal a good idea.
Nice plug. Will, you should give Susan free registration just for that comment.
It's true. It's true. That's where you get your best ideas. When other people are sharing what's worked.
Well, and I think to Gathan's point, there's a lot of discomfort that comes with this, and that's a good thing. It challenges us to get outside of our lane. It challenges us to act in roles we may not have perceived before, and that may be a little scary.
Is that just me? Mitch, are you
free?
Yeah,
I can jump in while Mitch finishes buffering. One of the things that we've done is we've taken a staff member from the leadership team paired with a member of the board in a relevant industry. And now we have a leadership team member and a board member assigned to about 10 or 12 different sectors around the city to make sure that we are communicating kind of on a weekly basis with these sectors to understand what their reopening practices are going to be, how can we advocate for them at the city and the state level, just sort of tracking those day-to-day issues, because, as not a week goes by in our DMO that we say, like, we own nothing. We are only as good as the collection of assets around the city. And yes, we own the brand, but we own nothing tangible. And if our partners fail, then we fail. So we took it upon ourselves we can't lead these discussions necessarily. I can't tell the restaurants what their clean and safe practices is but you can bet when they're ready to communicate out the ways that someone can be a good diner, then we're going to be there as a promotional partner. And if they need help breaking through government processes, that we're going to advocate for that as well. And so I do think it's important to get granular and engage every sector of your hospitality community, at least at the staff level, but our board members have been so willing to jump into this as well.
I love that. I had no clue that you, Justin, that's amazing, dude. Seriously, bravo. I love hearing that. I hope everybody else caught that. I feel like that is an incredible example to follow. So if you're curious, maybe even more, want to get more, contact Justin directly and ask him about that. I know he'd be willing to answer.
Happy to chat.
So Mitch, glad to have you back. Thanks. I know you're connecting to audio. There you go. Sorry, we lost you for a second there. You missed the most brilliant comment ever in the history of brilliant comments from Justin. Just want you to know.
Well, I can't take credit for it. I'm participating, but it was my boss's idea, so I'll give him credit for that. So.
Well, we got a great question from Ryan. Let's shift, and I appreciate that he asked it because again, there is so much we don't know. But how fearful are you of so-called second wave? And is the fear driving group business to not rebook at a fast pace and even some canceling into January, right? So how are you guys, how are you managing trying to maximize both, summer season where we are now, but kind of being cognizant of what the fall, what may hold for us, knowing we don't know? How are you guys dealing with that internally?
I mean, for us, I think the key, as we talk with just the staff and the industry, is to be as honest and transparent as possible, because there are so many unknowns that are involved with COVID-19. And personally, I'm a very healthy guy, but I'm fearful when I go out that if I get it, I think I can beat it, right? I'm just think like that. But my fear is I'm going to give it to somebody else. And so that whole idea of a second wave, that is probably the biggest fear that I have, because I've been honest with, my staff. And I think if you really have a second wave where things have to get shut down again, these businesses will not survive. And they will tell you that they cannot sustain. So I think we have to be honest in that conversation with our staff and saying, hey, if this comes, it's going to be ugly. So let's be prepared for it. But in the same vein, what we're doing with our media plan is trying to make sure that it's as nimble as possible. So if we do have to shut down for a certain period of time, we can do it, quickly. And then if we can restart back up again, we can do that really quickly. We can be pretty nimble. And we're kind of looking at it right now as in 3-month chunks. So we're doing 90-day media plans right now. So even though we have a budget for the full fiscal year, which ours starts on July 1, I'm not spending any money beyond 90 days because there's just so much unknown stuff out there. So it is totally at the forefront of my mind, and it's at the forefront of all the conversations that I'm having with our industry partners.
Anybody else, Justin or Mitch, you want to add to that?
I'm good.
Well, I would just say that we're looking, it's really also a question of leadership. And building on what Gathan said, and I know he's a great example of this, it's finding the duality of sharing information and tough information about indicators that suggest that fall is going to be very difficult. And at the same time, trying to be an encourager without just being positive in the face of tough uncertainty. And so, I think that calls on DMOs, and many on this call are already doing this, of being conveners, calling people together. We have regular calls with the attractions. We have regular calls with restaurants. We have regular calls with city officials. And if that's not happening in your community, it's not too late to start. Share information. What is each other doing? What are the indicators outside of your city that point to where business is going?
So I love that you said use the word conveners, because the last thing, at least this is the way, certainly what I have seen modeled so well for me growing up in this industry a little bit, but then obviously from all of you on the call, I think I've seen it in lots of ways too. It's not necessarily the idea of saying, yeah, follow me, I have all the answers, right? It's more, no, let's all get together and hold a space to where we can, I may not be able to provide any solutions, but by helping and hold the space for everybody else, you might be able to help this person over here or so forth, right? But inviting the conversation so that we all can begin collectively helping each other many times is often the unintended benefit there.
And this is just because it's such a fluid situation. We don't know. If the governor starts shutting down the states again, you got a whole other deal. But if there is an increase in cases, whether or not there's hospitalization or mortality or whatever going up, but even if there's an increase in the cases that gets people nervous again, I would still look for your sweet spots, which are, the millennials are traveling. So, when I just saw whatever it was that Miles put together and Amir had shared, and he was talking about, it was showing the numbers and who was more willing to travel, and those numbers, the traveler sentiment was going up again, and getting that information out to your partners so that they understand this may be that market that they could go and market to. That being said, there is that overarching issue that's, I don't know, you can't make that go away, but you can have something in place if it does not come to fruition, if you don't have that problem.
Justin, were you going to jump in there? Sorry.
Well, it's just, there's an irony out there. There's a bit of an inverse relationship between the willingness to travel and concerns for safety. So I think that's where it really comes on us, the DMO, to make sure that we are communicating how to be a responsible visitor as much as it is to communicate what the city is doing to keep them safe. So it's tough. It's, can't force people to do things, but.
We got a great question from Dan. Will, I'll kind of toss this to you here first, because we've touched on this just a little bit, but I feel like you bring so much to the table with your background and your experience and really inviting these kind of difficult conversations, and certainly leading many teams through, difficult crises and pandemics or before, or whatever, that you've had. So just managing the balance, right? Being funded by hotels, having hotels that you can't, people can't come to, how do you even think about wading in those waters and leading your team through that? How do you convene? And when you convene, what are you doing? What are you saying?
Obviously, it changes, right? I mean, it's a different model during crisis, and we're certainly there. But I think one thing that has always kind of guided me is you need to have a combination of kind of visionary public sector leadership. That's one job, right? How do you get your public sector leaders understanding where we're going and bought in? You have to have passionate, active public sector, private sector engagement. So public sector leadership, private sector engagement. You have to engage the community and all the workers that are providing the benefits and the services. And it's really a lot of communication and really intentional conversations about where you're trying to go. I mean, here, if we know what success looks like and we can get our public sector leaders to buy into that, our private sector partners to align with that, sometimes it's not, it's hard to sit at a table at a CVB boardroom and say, this is where we focus on the good of the whole and not the good of my individual business. And that's a hard thing, but that's what leaders do. And I think fostering that kind of leadership, community-driven leadership is really the opportunity. I think one other thing that kind of pops back into my mind on this in the last question is, we will never be the source of the answer to this information, right? We're not going to be the source. I mean, it was our oil spill or Zika or any crisis. We can't be the source of the data, but we can certainly be the communicators of that information so that nobody is being caught off guard. And I think if we look at the earliest days of COVID, that was the biggest challenge. I mean, nobody knew where, what to believe, what was the case. And so, how we can be the great facilitators of communication is a really powerful role, I think, for DMOs.
So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, we're wrapping up here. We got just 10 minutes, and we've covered a lot. But one of the things around what is a new ROI? What are the new skills we need to have? Conversations we're moving toward, all this kind of stuff. It really starts to sound like you guys are suggesting that a fundamental asset, right, or skill, is to develop the ability to be great facilitators. Right? To be great facilitators of the different stakeholder groups. And as we host these conversations, to be able to, navigate those waters, right? Well, and not feel like, not put ourselves in a position where we have to have the answer or have to be the author of anything, but we're facilitating dialogue between everybody, and then able to, build those, coalitions like we need to. That sounds to me, at least, what I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I'm going to have to jump off in a second. So I want to thank the Connect and and Josh for Streetsense for hosting. I will sort of leave with one thought, and that's we are only as successful right now at being those facilitators as we put in the legwork. So this is not about, this is about the work we're doing today, but it's about the work we're doing yesterday. And you always want to say about your network, like, you never want to leave it cold and just turn to them when you need another favor. And this is about 365 days a year, every year, fighting for that seat at the table, maintaining your relationships. And any bureau that's out there wondering why they can't break through with their communities, whether they're elected officials or residents, is because they didn't put in the work beforehand. And so this is the time for everyone to redouble their commitment to being that community partner and that advocate for the tourism industry, and putting the work in. And if you don't have someone that does that job, make it someone's job, because you can see now why it's so important, but you can't just wake up to it when there's a crisis. So you have to be doing this during the good times and the bad. So again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to my fellow presenters. It's great to see everyone, and good luck to everyone. Thanks, Mike.
No, thanks, Justin. Appreciate that. I couldn't agree more with what he said. Obviously, that is part of the hard assessment, right, to do, is to realize, in some ways, it's just like when we first started and we realized, oh man, we're shifting to local, but we don't even have the methods of communication designed to appropriately communicate well to the locals, right? Because all of our focus is on, the external and the visitors. So even in assessing some of that now, I think is important to a degree, right? Just like assessing, do we look like our community? Do we look enough like our community? Are we staffing? Have we really put our money where our mouth is on diversity and inclusion? And, is that true of us? If we say we're supportive of Black Lives Matter, do our policies really support that? If someone were to, does that really matter, right? There's a congruence there that needs to happen, right? So I love that. I love that comment from Justin. Real quickly, as we're wrapping up, Kay's got a great question here. Obviously, on Alabama's beaches, they're seeing great numbers, and which is awesome for them. And there is a sense, we've seen this in sentiment studies and stuff, this pent-up demand, this incredible urgency to want to get back to some semblance of normal, right? So she's asking, wonder if any of the panelists are seeing similar mindsets from the visitation that you are getting now through summer.
I think
Well, I'll just go ahead, Gathan.
I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of a running joke that, when the weather changed, everybody just canceled COVID-19 and pretend it didn't exist, and I think even when you take into account all the protests that happened, over the past 4 weeks, that really just threw everything out the window, and everybody just completely forgot about what's really out here. And I was telling my kids, like, we're actually going down to Savannah this weekend for a little vacation. So I don't know if my man Jeremy Harvey's on the call or not, but shout out to Jeremy and Savannah team. But I told them, I said, what you will do is you will wear a mask wherever you go. Because I was looking at the spike cases down there around Georgia and South Carolina, and it's an interesting mindset. So I totally get it. And it's one of those things that we just hammer home that CDC tells us the safest way to prevent this and the mitigation of it is to wear a mask. So we have to continue to drive that home. Obviously, we can't enforce that, but in all the messaging and stuff that we're doing going forward, we are telling people that it is important that you wear a mask, and we're recommending that for everybody.
Love it. Mitch, you're going to jump in there?
Well, I was just going to add that there's no question that our city has a long way to go in coming back, but we've had a couple of hotels hit 100% occupancy the last few weekends. You know, we've got this dual problem of trying to avoid illness, and at the same time, people are tired of being, cooped up in their home. And there's no question that as we came into spring, weather improves, people want to get out. And we have a lot of locals doing staycations, a lot of we're in a region of 7 million people. So we have the benefit of people wanting to stretch their legs and have a lot of options. But I'm with Gathan. I think DMOs are going to have to help navigate this landscape. Like Will said, we don't have the answers, but this is another one of those gray areas we will live in, that one of our community's goals is to be healthy, but to support the economy. That's an example of a gray area that's a community goal in the rebuilding that's going to require a different mindset. So if you're staffed with only Black and white people in your DMO, that may take stretching your legs and coming up, thinking in new ways. So definitely a challenge.
Guys, thanks so much for your time. Gosh, I knew this time would fly by. I look up and it's like, wow, it's been an hour already, but seriously, Susan, Gathan, Mitch, Will, thanks for everything that you guys are doing. Thanks for, joining us, and, continue to stay healthy and safe where you are. And to all of you tuning in for sticking it out with us this long, all 112 of you, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and great conversations. If there's anything that any of us, I know this, I'm speaking for them, but I know this because I know them. If there's anything that any of us could do, look us up on LinkedIn, connect with us, reach out, call, anything like that. We are more than happy to help in any way we can. And we look forward to seeing you on next week's webinar, right, Will? We got another great webinar next week. I'm not sure if Will is frozen or if you've been really good at holding that face for this long. I love it either way, but it's fantastic. So thank you seriously for everybody for tuning in, and look for a follow-up email with some takeaways from today's conversation, a link to recording, which you could share with your board, other members of your staff, especially anybody else that you think it might be influential for. And we'll talk to you and see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Gathan, thank you.
Thank you.
Mitch.
Great conversation.
Awesome. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you later.